I was in the library on Wednesday, and I decided, I was going to take a look at this Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice teaser trailer. And what I saw pretty much disturbed me. Why was it disturbing to me? I'm going to go into all the details in this video. The Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice trailer featured some of the most disturbing visuals I have ever seen. Now, Warner Brothers is promoting this as a superhero movie, but from what I saw in those bleak and dark visuals, I did not see anything that related to the genre of superheroes or, you know, the what it even means to be a superhero. I saw these visuals talking about how Superman is like a false god and how people resented Superman. And throughout history, people have always seen Superman as an American icon. They've always seen him as, truth, justice, in the American way. And in this movie, it's presented people hate Superman. They want him to go home. They're throwing rocks at his statues. They're spray painting false god on him. It really was a disturbing thing. And then we have Batman, and they're saying, somebody has to do something about this Superman and something like this other stuff. And then it reaches a point where where they put Batman on the screen, and he says, oh, when he in his confrontation with Superman, he says, "I wonder if you can bleed," and that took me to a place where I live here in the South Bronx, because I've heard guys make statements like this. They would say to another gang member, gang members would say this to each other, "I'm gonna make him wet," and that's what really was disturbing to me. Here you have Batman, who's supposed to be the Dark Knight, supposed to be the protector of Gotham City, a man who stands for justice, a man who stands for right, and he's making the same, almost a similar statement as a gang member, because this is what gang members say to each other: "I'm gonna make him wet." "I wonder if you can bleed" is just like saying, "I'm gonna make him wet." And this is a truly dysfunctional film as I see it, because the images that I saw in this film, there was not anything heroic. They're saying that they're building to a Justice League movie. I don't see any justice, being represented by these heroes. I mean, I look at the previous film, Man of Steel, again, another film that did not really present heroes being heroic. I mean, here we have, a so-called Superman, and he doesn't really do anything that's towards the greater good. I mean, at the end of the movie, he kills the villain. I mean, he snaps Zod's neck. And these are not the ideas and pictures you really want to see, you know, of heroes. This is not the representation of heroes. It really, I even look at the costumes and this costume design, cinematography. It was all so dark, so angry, and so mean spirited. I did not see, anything that related to the superheroes I grew up with or the ideals that they represented. In both movies, in Man of Steel and in this teaser for this Batman v Super, I don't see anything that represents superheroes. I don't see anything heroic. I don't see anything noble. I mean, even in the Marvel Studios films, they do a great job of representing black and white. But when I look at the DC world, I see a whole lot of dysfunction. I mean, even in their television series like Arrow, I'm now starting to see, this moral ambiguity, this gray area. I mean, and I see all this dysfunction on that show. Oliver Queen he's not good, he's not bad, and it really irks me to see that, because the Green Arrow I grew up with was a liberal who always stood for the rights of the little guy and always wanted to make sure that even the bad guys got their day in court. But this guy on television, now Stephen Amell is a great actor, but the way they're writing him, he's a gray area. He'll do wrong in the in the hopes of making things right, but it's a gray area, and this has been one of the big problems with Warner Brothers and DC Comics, over the last couple of years. Even in their Flash show, which is a great show in some points, there's some other disturbing points. You have Barry Allen pining for the girl who he was living with and was just like a sister to him. It's like a borderline incestuous relationship. And I look at many of these DC concepts, from the Batman v Superman trailer, Superman, the Man of Steel, and Arrow and Flash, and I'm seeing a lot of disturbing stuff. And it's like everything is in this gray area, and superheroes really need to be black and white. I mean, what makes superheroes work, the whole story paradigm for superheroes work is, that black and white. Good always triumphs over evil. But when you watch these Warner Brothers superhero movies, you wonder, is good worth it? I mean, and that's not something you really want people coming out of a superhero movie thinking about. You want them coming out feeling charged and energized and saying, "Yeah, the good guys beat the bad guys, and I'm ready to see the next installment." But when you watch a Warner Brothers movie, you don't really get that feeling. You just get the feeling that, is this good? I mean, the good guys do bad things and then say that they're doing from a greater good. That's almost, like the Justice Lords on the old um, Justice League cartoon from the 2000s, or the Crime Syndicate from the old DC comics. They're bad guys, um, but they believe that they're doing good for a greater good, and that's a really disturbing message to send to comic fans and to readers. Now, I looked at that again. I looked at this trailer, this teaser, and I said, if this is the messages that you're going to put in the movie, then I don't think I want to see this, because I'm looking at this movie and I'm looking at the messages in it and the themes in it, and it's just so angry and so mean. And that's not, again, not what comic book superheroes are all about. Comic book superheroes were always designed to be friends to kids. They were always designed to help kids, get a better understanding of their world, help them navigate their world, and instill in them a sense of community and a sense of using your talents and gifts to help others. Now, I'm not seeing that in any of these DC superheroes movies that have just come out recently, like Man of Steel, and I've seen it in Arrow, and I'm not. It's kind of, you barely see it in the Flash TV show, but that's the only one you really see that kind of message instilled in there. But it really needs to be a paramount theme, because it's big part of the superhero paradigm, and that part of the paradigm is being lost because everybody is, they're trying it over at DC Comics to make the next Watchmen and Dark Knight Returns, and we really don't need to go back to that era in comics. That era, as I see it, is pretty much done. The grim and gritty period is pretty much passe. We're in the middle of a new baby boom, and right now we need content that gets kids into comics and gets kids to get to know superheroes and get to know what their missions and what their goals are. And we're not getting. And then over on the DC side, where this is not happening. And the sad irony is that DC Comics for many years was promoting this as the ideal. All their superheroes always stood for, paragons of truth and justice, doing what is right all the time, and standing up for what is right all the time. And now, because DC has been in this decade and a half of dysfunction, and Warner Brothers has been completely clueless when it comes to making and adapting their material, they're putting out these pretty depraved films where, you have Batman acting like a crip and talking in a way like he's going to make him wet or he's going to flatline him. I mean, that's what I saw in that teaser. That's what that line really made me think about, was these gang members in my neighborhood, or these gang members throughout, inner city neighborhoods. And that's not the way Batman acts. Again, Batman is a dark knight. He's a chivalrous hero. He always stands for what's right. This type of confrontation, also reminds me of many of these black men on the YouTube and how they act. Because if you watch a lot of their videos where they go back and forth with each other, you'll see the same interpersonal exchanges, just like you saw in this Batman v Superman trailer. Guys going back and forth with each other, guys making threats at each other. And I think Warner Brothers executives really need to really take a look at their content, and then take a look at some of these videos featuring these black men and how they go back and forth, because they're acting in the exact same way. It's pretty much dysfunctional. I mean, when I think of a Batman Superman confrontation, I go back to the Paul Dini Bruce Timm episode World's Finest, that 3-part or 90-minute movie. It's on some DVDs as the Batman Superman movie. That confrontation, it got hot, but both men were men, and they had the discipline and the self-control to understand how to navigate their emotions the way it was written. That they showed the strengths of each of Batman and Superman, and it showed the weaknesses of Batman and Superman in that one Batman Superman movie, and it did it beautifully. But when I look at when I looked at that, they acted like men. They solved it. They confronted each other, but it didn't get to the point where it got so personal that he's gonna make a statement like, "I wonder if you can bleed." That when I think about when I think about that statement, I think about how ghetto that is and how dysfunctional that is. Because again, that's like a gang member. That's like a guy from a single parent household with no father in the home. And when I think about Batman and Superman, here we have Superman who always had his father in his home, and had his father in his life, and Batman who always had male figures like Alfred in his life to teach them both manhood. And I doubt things would get that emotional or that personal. But again, this is what happens when people don't understand the roles of fathers and the impact of male figures on boys and how it relates to males and male characters. Because what I saw in that trailer, right, the teaser, was a lot of emotion. And this is the way your emotional male thinks. Because again, that's the way emotional males think. Because I live around emotional males, and when they have confrontations, they make statements like this, and they're just totally out there, and it gets to the point where everything gets real personal. I mean, same thing that I saw with this whole Ra's al Ghul storyline on Arrow. I mean, I thought about these guys in these female-headed households, and I thought about how gang members recruit people into the gang. Because I was watching this, I was continuing to watch most of season 3, even though it's pretty much absolutely horrible in the writing department. And I thought about how gang members recruit other people in the gang. It's like Oliver Queen is being bullied by Ra's al Ghul to join his gang, and after he kills his sister, he decides, you know what, in order to save her life, I'm gonna join your gang. And that's what the kind of message that was presented, in that episode. I really don't think these writers or these producers are really thinking about, how their messages are coming across. Because when I looked at that at this storyline in Arrow with this Ra's al Ghul, he's saying that I want you to become the next Ra's al Ghul. I thought about how gang members in high schools recruit kids. They bully them. They threaten them. They destroy everything around them. They destroy their property. They terrorize them. And the sad message was, instead of Oliver Queen standing up for himself, what I saw in the last episode last week, and I said I'm not going to watch the show anymore, is he submits to the gang. And what type of message is that sending to people? And the other thing with the Flash, the thing that disturbs me is the old Barry Allen living with Iris West. Now, if one of my blogger readers, Admina, pointed this out to me, and I started to look at it and say, yeah, he was absolutely right. That Barry Allen living in the same house as Iris West, and they're just like brother and sister, and he's pining for her on a romantic level, that comes across as borderline incestuous. But I look at all of these, concepts and pictures in DC Comics and their adaptations, and I don't think anybody's sitting there and helping them understand that these people, the executives and stuff, understand that the content that they're producing is a bit disturbing. And but then again, DC Comics have been pretty much a bit disturbing for over a decade and a half, under the mismanagement of Dan Dido and Diane Nelson. And because if you're looking at DC Comics these days, content is pretty much sick. I mean, I looked at one DC comic where somebody tore off a guy's head, or people have been gutted and eviscerated. People have had, again, this is not content, you would share with families, and I think this is really going to hold them back, Warner Brothers and DC Comics, and keep them from growing, because you can't make superhero movies featuring disturbing content like this, and you can't really make TV shows with disturbing content like this and hope to build a larger mainstream audience. What made the Marvel Studios films appealing to everyone is because they were family friendly, they were kid friendly. Now, there were some adult themes in there, and sometimes like characters like Tony Stark might skirt a gray area, but they always came back over to the line of the white hats. They never, went all the way over to the gray area. With the DC characters I'm seeing, in many of the media adaptations, is all this immorality and moral ambiguity. Everybody's in the gray area, just like they are in the comics since 2002, and that's really, I think, going to slow their brand down, because when they had products like Justice League Unlimited Justice League, Batman the Animated Series, Superman the Animated Series out, everything was clearly black and white, and you saw who the good guys were. You knew what the good guys stood for. You knew what the good guys' mission was, and it really made you identify with the characters and connect with them. But when it comes down to this gray area, it becomes hard to connect with characters and identify with them because if the bad guys, if the good guys are doing the exact same thing as the bad guys, then who do you root for? And more importantly, why should we care? I mean, if if the good guys can be easily swayed to join a gang, then what type of message does that send to kids? And and you really have to think about this stuff because when I'm writing stories, this is what I think about. What type of message am I sending out? What are people going to get from these themes? What type of ideas are they going to get from what I present to the reader? Because I always feel that I have a personal responsibility to present the most positive message possible. If this is my mission to present positive stories about the African American experience, then I really have to look at the plots that I'm writing, the themes that I'm writing, how the characters represent themselves, how they carry themselves, and I'm not seeing that type of conscientiousness at your Time Warner or your DC Comics. And the sad part is, this is $1 billion company, and they're completely clueless as how to manage this DC Comics brand or the adaptations that they produce. Because I believe that if they had their heads on straight and were producing, really strong content, they could give Marvel Studios a serious run for their money. But it seems like they are still completely clueless and they're still stuck in the 1990s, even though they made the. I'm not a fan of that Nolan trilogy because, again, it's just too dark and too angry. And I think superheroes need to instill hope in people and inspire them to be their very best because, again, superhero is designed for children. It's designed to help children understand their world, navigate their world, understand, they have special gifts and abilities because we all have special gifts, talents, and abilities. And it's our responsibility to share those gifts and talents and abilities with others. And they instill a sense of community in people, and that you are here to protect your community and support your community in the best way possible. And that's really what superheroes were designed to be about. And I'm not seeing that in your Time Warner properties or your Time Warner adaptations. And I didn't see it in that Batman v Superman trailer. And, this is supposed to be the foundation for their, rollout of all of these movies for superheroes. And I'm not seeing superheroes being represented at all. I'm really seeing a moral gray area filled with people who it's going to be hard to connect with and relate to. Yeah, they're wearing costumes, but when you look at the values they represent and the ideas they represent, they're pretty much dysfunctional. And is this what you want to convey to, especially to children and young adults? These are. I really look at the. Again, I wrote this in the blog that they reminded me a lot of not only gang members but people like your James Holmes and your Elliot Rogers, because I've read their manifestos and stuff like that. Because I was doing research for a book called Stop Simping, um, and again, a lot of their ideologies are almost parallel in today's comics and in a lot of these DC Comics properties. They're not really acting like heroes. They're acting, very emotional, taking things personal, and acting like, men from single parent households who've never had a male figure in their life. And when I look at superheroes and I understand the history of your Superman and your Batman, guys who have male figures in their lives just don't act like what I saw in that Batman v Superman trailer, or what I've seen, in shows like Your Arrow, where it's just a big gray area. I mean, I've seen men. They know how to solve problems. They know how to think critically. They build a resolve and they develop character. And I'm not seeing this being conveyed in your Time Warner DC Comics properties. And I think that the material that they're going to produce is just very damaging for anybody who imbibes it or watches it, and it's not something that I would put money in. I would spend money on because I look at this type of soup. This is not a superhero movie that I would spend money on just based on the teaser. It just, again, it's just too mean spirited, too dark, too angry, and these are not the heroes I grew up with. These are not the missions that they stood for. I mean, I don't see, like in Man of Steel, they said Superman let a bus full of kids go over the edge. I doubt Superman would do something like that. The Superman that I grew up with, who was raised by Jonathan Kent, would not do anything like that. And I don't think, the Oliver Queen I grew up with would make all the compromises that the character in Arrow has made, especially over this last season. And I just don't see, the spirit and the heart of DC's superheroes being represented in their live action properties the way I saw it being presented in Paul Dini and Bruce Timm's Justice League and Justice League Unlimited and their Batman the Animated Series, the Superman the Animated Series, and Batman Beyond. And even, Greg Weisman's Young Justice presented a lot of the spirit and the heart of the DC Comics characters. And really, I believe that Time Warner has to get DC Comics characters back to the spirit and the heart that they had and get them back to standing up for their ideals, because that's what those heroes stand for. They stand for doing what's right no matter what and standing for justice no matter what. You can't get justice from injustice. Because I live in the black community where people try to get justice from injustice, and it leads to more chaos and dysfunction. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. I have a lot of great books on Amazon.com. Many, like those in my ISIS series and The Temptation of John Haynes, are available on Kindle Unlimited, so you can borrow those books for free if you have Amazon Prime. I also have ebooks available, and they all start at 99 cents, and I also have paperbacks available. So there's a lot of great reading available to you. Many of the stories I present feature positive heroes that stand up for what they believe in and are willing to do what is right, and they're willing to, put all their and do what is right no matter what, and they're willing to stand for what they believe in, and it's really good reading for all ages, and I can highly recommend, many of my books, like those in the ISIS series, for tweens and teens, and it's really good reading, and I'm urging you to give it a try. Again, this is the end of this video. Comment, rate, and subscribe.